You can speak. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Peter Guillauze, the Land Bank's Preserve Steward on Orcas Island. And we have several presenters tonight, so we'll have them introduce themselves. Start with Erin. Go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, hi, I'm Erin Haltham. I'm the stewardship coordinator for the Land Bank, and I've been working to support Peter and Kayla on this forest health project, and look forward to, it's been a privilege to work with all the partners. I'll keep it short.
Hello, everyone. Carson Springer here with Rain Shadow Consulting, and happy to be part of the project.
Kai.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kai Hoffman-Kroll, and I'm the Forest Health Manager at the San Juan Islands Conservation District. And I manage the Islands Conservation Corps, which is one leg of this. I guess there's a lot of legs of the stool, but one leg of the stool for this project. So real pleasure to be working with all these partners and looking forward to the presentation today.
Thanks, everybody. We also have Dean Doherty here, our other partner in the project from the San Juan Preservation Trust. He may chime in later in the Q&A. So yeah, it's great to see so much interest in this important topic, and happy to have you all here. We'll go through the presentation in about 30 minutes, and then we'll have about 30 minutes for Q&A. So you may have seen an announcement for this presentation in a number of different places. It placed a lot of emphasis on the recently completed Turtleback and Turtlehead forest assessments, but the real focus tonight is some demonstration projects that we hope to implement over the next 6 months or so. So we'll provide a little bit of background on forest issues, forest health. We'll describe what we've been doing to plan this and the work to date in the preserve, and then we'll tell you a little bit about the projects themselves. Back in May, the governor signed House Bill 1168, which is focused on bringing resources toward promoting long-term forest health and reducing fire risk. So as you all have heard in the news, in addition to being subject to wetter winters, San Juan County is also looking at drier summers under climate change. And we can expect this to impact forest health through tree mortality. And, there's basically just going to be longer, drier summers with longer, more severe fire seasons. So the land bank has about 2,000 acres of forest lands on Orcas Island, and they vary in condition and in age. And we're going to be taking a closer look at the rest of those forested areas over the next year. But our focus thus far has been on Turtleback, and the San Juan Islands Conservation District has played a central role in helping to coordinate forest management efforts around the county. And earlier in the year, they put out a request for projects seeking funding, forest health projects seeking funding. At that time, we were just finishing up our work on the Turtleback forest assessment with Rain Shadow Consulting. And we went ahead and put in a request to the Conservation District for funds to do some small-scale projects demonstrating some of the practices that were recommended in that Turtleback forest assessment. And we were awarded a $30,000 grant to do that work. The first Turtleback stewardship and management plan came out in 2008, and that set the stage for stewardship at Turtleback broadly. That work has continued successfully since then, focused mainly on the south slope in the Gary Oak habitat, basically removing encroaching conifers from that area. We started to look more closely at the conditions across the broader site, the 1,600-acre preserve, and ended up working with Rain Shadow Consulting on that assessment I mentioned earlier. We are just wrapping up the update to the 2008 Stewardship and Management Plan for the preserve, and have incorporated into that a number of the recommendations from the forest assessment. This current plan will go off for public comment soon, and that looks forward to the next 10 years and beyond. And a lot of the work we're doing in these demonstration projects will hopefully be done more broadly over the next years. But our overarching objectives are to enhance forest health, habitat value, and resiliency in the face of climate change. The projects we're here to describe this evening aim to highlight those practices, and we hope to do it in areas that are highly visible near the trails, so that the preserve users can see them, hear them, and hopefully learn from them. And let's see, slide. The project areas are clustered on the south slope, basically between the parking area and where you come out into the open habitat at the top of the slope. There are 3 areas. We'll talk about them in a little more detail shortly, but the first is about 2.5 acres of upland forest thinning. And the next is about 6.5 acres mixed oak woodland and savanna. And then there's about 600 feet of roadside work where we would reduce fuels along the road. So I'm going to turn it over to Carson. He's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the projects.
Thank you, Peter. Apologies in advance here. I did receive my vaccine booster this morning, so I'm a little bit slow, so bear with me. I'm a little tired, but thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to go through a couple specifics, location of the projects, and some of the practices we're going to employ. So there really are kind of 3 primary strategies for this sort of demonstration work. And it comes down to reducing tree density, removing conifers from Gary oaks, and some of the large, more longer-lived trees, typically the old-growth Douglas fir, tree reduction through tree thinning. Number 2 is to really enhance the structure, creating snags, some down logs, coarse-wooded debris, and wildlife enhancement features. And kind of the third strategy would be to reduce surface fuels, in part to reduce the risk of wildfire. And that's through what we call a fuel break, or a shaded fuel break. Let's see, next slide. Down here. Oh, great. So hopefully y'all are familiar with South Entrance, just up from the parking lot. In fact, if you took the road, there would be a gate there. And once you're just through the gate, that begins the fuel break portion. And you can see on the map, it's sort of delineated in red, and it says fuel break. The second area where the conifer thinning is a fairly uniform stand, delineated there in the red. It's about, I think it's about 2 acres for the young stand, and so around 1 acre for the shaded fuel break. So that gives you a little just location. Third area is where it crosses both sides of the access trail as you head up to the sort of previously restored Gary oak woodlands or savanna. Now there's a couple of areas that really contain some quite well-developed older Gary oak trees, and a mixture of young conifers and young to medium-aged, somewhat large conifers, principally Douglas fir. That should give you an area where that treatment area is about 6.5 acres. And this table kind of defines the 3 treatment areas. goes proposed actions and some of the details and specifics. So really with all three projects, the proposed actions really began with careful delineation and careful tree marking. Tree marking focuses on the removal trees, but really there's a strong emphasis when we do the tree marking on what will be retained. And that's the most important thing, the features we'll be leaving in place. And the retained trees are typically the larger, older, and more resilient individuals. So taking each project at a time, I'm just going to kind of walk through this somewhat briefly here. So upland forest, primarily the proposed actions would be a selective thinning and increase abundance of snags through snag creation and downwood on the forest floor. So some of the details you should know about is there will be essentially a control area that is untouched and is very similar in structure and is in fact kind of right side by side. It will be nice to observe over time. And there will primarily most of the debris created from the tree cutting will be chipping. There'll be chipped debris and the debris will be left on site to decay. There may be some conservation burns or some biochar creation as the project develops. Second area is the Gary Oak habitat, and that's primarily actions being release the oaks, give them access to more light through targeted removal of competing young conifers, encroaching conifers, and some of these semi-large but young to medium-age Douglas firs. And that's really through precision and directional felling, and then managing that debris through conservation burns, given the topography, likely no chipping along those locations. The fuel break, the shaded fuel break, is along that access road at the bottom, and the design really is to limit the rate of fire and the intensity of fire, literally the flame lengths, if a fire was to be burning on either side of that road, or possibly an ignition started from the road. So that's really managing those finer fuels. So the brush, down branches and debris, and small conifers. So those will get cut, in many cases chipped or ground up, or masticated on site. The demonstration project, in terms of kind of workflow objectives, there's four real objectives. So it's to inform user groups about statewide forest health and fire risk reduction goals. That's interesting. You do have just 3 on there, Peter. Slightly different versions. Interesting. I won't read those 4. There will be 3. Inform, preserve users about statewide forest health and hazard reduction objectives, or fire risk reduction goals. Collaborate with staff, land bank staff, crew, ICC crew, and contractors with planned future work, and as a learning or demonstration, and really to demonstrate successful implementation and also to secure additional funding for future work. Forest health and why it matters. Essentially what we're looking at is across all of these little project areas, it's fair to say that some of the biggest impacts were from previous land use, and that is logging or timber extraction, fire exclusion, and those have really led to an altered structure, in some cases altered composition, and really reduced resilience to disturbance, be that natural or planned disturbance. And density reduction, or essentially thinning, really aims to decrease the stress, oftentimes caused by drought and exacerbated by the shifts with respect to climate change. And I think we're going to transition over to Kai to wrap up the last third. With us, Kai?
Yeah, thanks so much, Carson. Well, it's really just been a pleasure to get to work with the different partners on this project, and certainly the land bank staff has just been a really valuable set of individuals working. Really, this project obviously is focused with this Turtleback demonstration site, but really the land bank across the islands is really taking courageous steps around forest health and forest health resiliency. So just want to say thank you so much to that organization in general for the work they're doing. Peter and land bank staff were really instrumental in deciding the locations. And as Carson was saying, the balance there of both really wanting to focus on ecosystems that are needing increased resiliency, but also can really illustrate different treatment types and different priorities for forest health within that Turtleback Preserve, and really then illustrate that to the community and to the public. So site selection was really a key role that they played. And this project design really is, as Peter was saying, a continuation and evolution of some of the work that's been happening since 2008, and then this recent assessment that was done by Rain Shadow Consulting that is now being incorporated into the updated plan. It's really an exciting chance to be looking at how we're addressing and looking at forest health over these next 10 years, and really getting this being one of those first initial steps towards some of those larger scale plans. And I think that, I love that Peter, when we were walking around the site, a lot of us are talking about the trees, and Peter kept bringing us back to the understory, which of course is such an essential piece of this equation, that forest health is not just about the trees we're trying to preserve, but also about the resiliency of pollinator habitat and many of the at-risk species that are oftentimes encroached upon because of the shaded elements of the conifer encroachment and density that we have because of the lack of fire in the landscape. So this is an exciting chance to both be increasing some of that light access, increasing some of the water access to in those areas, and then getting to plant either shrub pollinators and or species that have been more excluded due to current forest health conditions. Next slide, please. So I work for the Conservation District, and the Conservation District has taken a key role in the San Juan Islands Forest Health Collaborative, which is really the consortium of different land management agencies in the county that are working on forest health issues in our archipelago. And that was launched in 2019 and has really been getting a significant evolution with some of the recent funding from the Department of Natural Resources. We were selected as one of the top 10 priority sites for Western Washington within their 2020 Forest Action Plan. And so we are really working in collaboration with DNR around a whole assortment of different programs and strategies to be increasing forest health in our area. And just one key note there is that they did identify that we are set to have the highest increase of drought conditions of anywhere in Western Washington, any populated area, I should say, in Western Washington. So really increasing our drought resiliency is going to be one of the major issues that we face, and one of the essential reasons why we need to be conducting the work that we're doing. And so then in 2020, the San Juan Islands Conservation District launched the Islands Conservation Corps, and we're now in our second year of implementation. And that core is a partnership both with the land management agencies in the county. We work on pretty much all of the public lands in the county, or work with all the agencies who have public lands in the county, but also with Western Washington University, Huxley College of the Environment, which is both this year providing a certificate in ecological restoration. So crew members conduct about 20 hours a week of hands-on field activities in restoration ecology, and then also take 7 credits per quarter in different elements of restoration ecology, some of those being environmental sciences, but also some of those being some of the technical skills that are necessary for this work, such as GIS, Geographic Information Services, training in database management, database data interpretation and analysis, as well as then direct data collection in the field so that we're able to be doing monitoring and able to understand what the effects of management really are in these landscapes. And so really it's been a very exciting year to be launching this sort of enhanced certificate program with Huxley, and proud to put forth the new information that we actually will be launching a master's program as a part of the ICC in 2022. So some of the current members will be transitioning then into a master's program and still conducting some work on public lands. So very exciting evolution of that program. And then just one note, I think, in terms of the implementation around Garry Oak ecosystems and some of the need for that work is that currently Garry Oak ecosystems are about 3% of the total population of what they were at European contact. So Garry Oaks require very open grown, sunny woodland and savanna ecosystems. And the lack of fire in the landscape over the last 150 years has really played a huge detriment to the health of those ecosystems in our area. And that's not only problematic because of the historic and cultural role that Garry Oaks played. Garry Oaks were a major farming area of the Coast Salish people, both the Garry Oaks themselves and the acorns that were produced, but also the ecosystem in terms of the understory of lilies and other plants that were cultivated then as food and medicine crops. So again, these ecosystems have played a very essential historic role in our area. But also Garry Oaks are considered one of the more resilient species for climate change. They're very drought tolerant, and as was just expressing, and as Carson expressed, certainly drought is one of the issues that we're going to be facing most prominently in our area. And so the fact that we are at some of the most northern range of Garry Oak ecosystems, and that they at least the data shows that they should be resilient to some of the increasing drought that we're facing, is certainly a reason why we want to be investing in Garry Oaks as we transition into a even further changing climate. And one of the techniques that we're really trying to utilize with the ICC crew in terms of some of this Garry Oak restoration work, and really in general forest health restoration, that's as Carson was saying, certainly also trying to invest in some of the legacy firs that are in our area. One of the key strategies we're doing is converting some of that excess biomass, especially the small limbs and excess biomass, into charcoal, which is an area of research that the Conservation District has invested in now for around 5 years. Also an area of research that I've been conducting with both University of Washington, University of Montana, and now Oregon State University. And it's a promising new best practice in terms of both carbon sequestration. 1 pound of charcoal sequesters around 3 pounds of carbon dioxide, and that sequestration rate can last for anywhere between several hundred to several thousand years. But also a lot of both local and international research shows the very significant role that charcoal holds in terms of water holding capacity, biological community enhancement, and also nutrient retention in the topsoil. So it's a key practice that we hope will aid in the increasing resiliency of our ecosystems as they face increasing challenges with climate change. Next slide, please. Rain shadow, of course, has played a key role on a number of levels. One, they've played a key role in terms of creating the forest health assessment that is driving some of this work and really updating some of the planning that was first generated in 2008 for the Turtleback Preserve. Rain shadow really is one of the leaders in technical tree work in the county, and has really played an educational role for some of the ICC crew members as well. Yeah, really plays that this is a great photo. They're not climbing a cactus, they're climbing a fir, and there's definitely going to be some technical felling involved in this project that is going to require a lot of sensitive management of some of the firs around the Gary Oaks, because Gary Oaks can be significantly damaged if they're hit during the thinning process. And so some of this is going to require rigging and expert felling. And so we're really grateful for the role that the experts at Rain Shadow can play in that work. Snag creation. Snags can be home to around 400 different invertebrates. And so as we are dealing with some of the abundance of Doug firs and various firs in the county, snag creation is one great alternative to, rather than bringing that down to the forest floor. Snags can really serve as a great habitat for wildlife. And then chipping is another great tool in terms of biomass processing that then can aid in terms of providing a nice mulch layer. Some of these newly thinned forest stands sometimes can increase in their evaporation rate because of the increased sunlight onto the forest floor. And so chipping provides a nice opportunity to retain some of that moisture and also invest in some of the organic matter build up for that future topsoil. Next slide, please. San Juan Preservation Trust is a key partner in the Turtleback Preserve with the land bank, and is going to be playing a key role in terms of monitoring both the activities and definitely a guiding force in terms of the values of the work that we're doing. And we will be continually engaging with their team and Dean Doherty around making sure that the activities that we're conducting are really meeting the vision and the priorities for this, for the planning efforts, and certainly for that organization. And the Preservation Trust has also been incredibly generous in terms of funding and supporting the work on Turtleback. The Turtleback Endowment Fund has provided ongoing financial assistance and is a great partner in to the DNR funding that we received this year and that we hope to receive into the future. Next slide, please. So the timeline for this project is quick. we got the funding when, you know, basically the announcement came several months ago, and it was sort of an exciting opportunity to see how fast we could run and get projects set up. And thankfully, we've had sort of wonderful response on a number of from a number of our partners and from the community around different opportunities for utilizing that funding. And so activities will begin in December, and we're looking to already have done a lot of the planning efforts, but then actual implementation will begin in December. And we will conclude all activities by June 15th of 2022. That is both to satisfy the grant requirements, but also because we are really trying to push as much of, especially the thinning work, earlier into the season to not be problematic for nesting season for wildlife and for birds. So trying to really address all of the different ecological elements and try to invest in those ecosystems in a conscientious way. Next slide, please. So yeah, if you frequent the Turtleback Preserve, these are some things to be aware of. That work will be conducted over these next 6 to 7 months. These activities will definitely be conducted during normal business hours. So if you're walking along, feel free to stop on by and say hey and ask questions if you'd so like. We don't anticipate to do trail closures. If that does occur, we will certainly have signage and make it very clear that the trails are not safe to cross, but we don't anticipate that to happen in any sort of significant way. We are, as Peter mentioned, doing these activities in highly visible areas and in mainly, main traffic locations, because we are really trying to have this serve as a demonstration and illustrate how these practices could potentially be utilized across the county. So, as I mentioned before, this is not only trying to focus on the work at hand, but also explain the why and the rationale for the work so that people can understand how this may be incorporated into their own forests. So please anticipate noise. Chainsaws will definitely be a part of this equation. And we will be doing a lot of cutting and piling and processing. And also for the conservation burns that are focused on maximizing charcoal production or biochar production, there will be some smoke during those activities. We are definitely trying to take all precautions to maximize the cleanliness of those burns and to minimize the smoke production, but smoke will certainly be a part of the equation. Next slide, please. And so this is really, a devastating photo. This photo was taken back in 2015 after the massive wildfires that went through eastern and central Washington. And this is an area of the Okanagan. And the photo on the right was a forest before the burn. And this illustrates how some of the catastrophic burns that we are now experiencing in a changing climate really can leave just incredible devastation. And San Juan County is certainly not removed from this. I was working on this biochar research project with the Oregon State University dean. His name is Dr. Tom DeLuca, and we were driving actually on the water back to the ferry, and we were talking about sort of the potential for wildfire. And it was definitely during the time of the summer when smoke was circulating and everybody was wearing masks and talking about it. It was obviously a major subject, very present for all of us. And he said, basically he said, complaining about smoke is kind of like complaining about cold weather. He said we have to just kind of get used to the fact that this is going to be a part of our future, and really is always been a part of our past. That we've had this period of fire exclusion through very strategic intervention and reduction of wildfire, but that has also created a density issue where so many of the trees then that would normally have been processed and thinned through fire are now left standing. And so that means that catastrophic fires burn at a hotter rate and a more severe rate than they did historically. And so it's community activities like this where we strategically are looking at what are the locations and what are the strategies utilized to reduce some of that danger, where fire will not leave our ecosystem. It will always be a part of it, but we can work with that in a conscientious way so that it can actually play a beneficial role instead of a catastrophic role in our archipelago. So just wanted to put this photo forward and say this is exactly what we're trying to avoid, right, with projects like this. And this is exactly what we're trying to invest in, is incredibly unique ecosystems, forest ecosystems of San Juan County. And we have so many legacy forests that we want to continue to invest in and continue to make available to the public, because that's one of the pieces that we prize the most as a community. So it's an honor and a privilege to get to be working on projects like this with such great partners, and look forward to working with you all and getting to talk with you all as we move forward on this project. So thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you. That was a great presentation. We'll have a question and answer session now, and I'd like to ask participants to stay on mute and raise your hand, and we'll scroll through trying to give everyone an opportunity to ask a question first before we revisit. So let's see, we have a question from Tom Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Erin. I want to say, first of all, that I applaud what I hear tonight. This is really great. And Peter has been a wonderful, the word I'm looking for, a wonderful spokesperson for the Turtleback. He talks to us frequently, and we feel very good about what he's doing. The one thing I did not hear much about tonight is the possibility of limbing of the primarily the Doug firs that are around the perimeter. On the south slope of Turtleback, there are grasslands, which in July and August are just an abundant and very, very great fuel. And right up against those grasslands are Doug firs that have their limbs right down into the grass. And what you want to avoid is having the fire ladder get that fire up into the canopy of the trees, because then you are really in serious trouble. So I've heard a lot of things tonight that make a lot of sense, but I haven't heard any discussion of limbing. Can you give me some idea of where we stand?
Thank you, Tom. I think I'll let Carson field that. And I think in general, limbing is considered part of fuels reduction, but Carson?
Great question. Yeah, two things. In the shaded fuel break design, there is a lot of limbing or lifting of the lower crown within that shaded fuel break zone, both in the zone adjacent to the road and limbs that overhang the road for clearance and the fire safety. But I think just based on where these projects are, there might not be too many opportunities for that style of limbing that you're discussing, but I would imagine as projects move into some of the more savanna areas, that would be something that is somewhat broadly employed, because that you make a great point about that transition from light surface fuels to the sort of resinous conifer fuels, the ladder fuels, and that can be a difficult situation where you got to have a fire. So great point.
Yeah, and I'll just speak to that as well, because Tom, I think you're wonderful observation and great piece to add. We certainly, as the ICC crew, has been working on a number of different forest health treatments across the county. We were just working on Jones Island today, getting ready. They're going to be conducting another prescribed burn within a year or two. And we also have done a series of work on different landscapes over this last year and a half. And we certainly, when we're in savanna areas, we're really prioritizing limbing those lower branches. And oftentimes, both ones that are dead, sickly, trying to reduce exactly the ladder fuel issue that you proposed. So it is, this project has a lot of different elements and is not fundamentally focused on some of those savanna areas, but where applicable, we certainly are going to be trying to reduce those ladder fuels. We see that as a key priority.
I just add that in certain instances, we have large open grown firs, and those lower limbs provide tremendous habitat value. So, I think we're trying to strike a balance and deal with the fuel issues where they're most pressing, but those low limbed big firs are unique and highly valuable. So we want to be careful around trimming those up too much. And just one other thing, I just want to apologize. There were a number of pop-ups and things on the screen. We had some last minute technical glitches and we're looking at two screens here and it got a little confusing, but so sorry about those various things that were happening in the presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you. Any other questions? Raise your hand. Or comments? It's a quiet group.
Janet has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had another meeting run late and I missed the beginning, but I'm so interested in this subject. How do you get your own land or your neighborhood involved in this kind of project?
Thanks, Janet. I'll let Kai field that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Janet. So as part of the Forest Health Collaborative, we actually recently launched sort of a pilot project for cost share opportunities for forest landowners to be conducting some of this forest restoration work on their own private lands. And that project really is set up to be going much more full-fledged in the coming year. DNR is looking to be establishing a Western Washington cost share program for forest health. And so we have had around $50,000 to launch sort of a pilot program. We announced that in the papers. Actually, the deadline is today, is the 15th. So if feel free to go to if you want to do a last minute application, feel free to go to the website. The application is on the Conservation District website under programs. But just to let you know that there will definitely be more funding coming down the road. And in addition, the NR, or Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is the conservation branch of the USDA, has two different programs that provide cost share funding for forest landowners to do forest health work on their private lands. Those are both the EQIP program, the Environmental Qualities Incentive Program, which provides sort of the initial opportunity for getting in and providing some initial management. And then the Conservation Stewardship Program, which provides quite a bit of extra funding that then can allow landowners to take that stewardship a few notches forward. So definitely encourage you to reach out to both Conservation District staff, myself, if you want to learn more, as well as the local NRCS office in Cedar Woolley has some great individuals, and feel free to contact them about some of their cost share programs.
Oh, well, thank you, Kai. I did see that ad. I only have 5 sort of scraggly acres. I wouldn't call it like a real timber operation. And I don't care about the cost share so much. I just want the knowledge. So and I'd like to try and set an example in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And one thing we're planning to do is to lead some tours of these work areas over the next year, kind of winter, spring, summer, to let people see it close up at at different stages, and hopefully that'll be useful to people.
Thank you, Peter. Yes.
Any other questions? And
Must be more questions.
careful what you ask for, Peter. This will be available also, Janet, on, Bill.
I apologize for coming in late. I was working outside, believe it or not, but I presume prescribed burns is going to be part of this. Just say a yes or no. I mean, I know I'm late, so you probably already talked about that.
Yeah, I can speak to that briefly again. Prescribed burns is a treacherous subject matter, so I can't say yes or no to that. Burning is certainly going to be a piece of this equation. We are conducting conservation burns and have been working actively with both the local fire districts as well as the Department of Natural Resources around very specific permitting for these forest health burns. It's actually really at an exciting stage where they're utilizing San Juan County as sort of their testing ground to really develop a permitting process for these biochar conservation burns for the state. So really we're at sort of a nice spot of helping innovate some new regulations around these issues. Prescribed burns indicate fires that are generated that then transition through the landscape, and there's a lot of reasons why that is anxiety provoking for landowners and certainly anxiety provoking for agencies. So we are not currently conducting prescribed burns, but intentional burning that does not transition or move through the landscape is certainly a part of this program.
And this is limited to these demonstration projects, but I will say that I certainly aspire to use prescribed burning in the future when we have all the proper expertise in place and conditions are right. I mean, I think it's a vital part of land management long term. We're not quite there yet, but I'm certainly hopeful that in my career or shortly thereafter, it's going to be something that we can do safely in places like Turtleback.
And just one last piece, because yeah, thanks, Peter. The Department of Natural Resources recently launched a whole new prescribed burn program, both in terms of certifying agency partners, such as members on this call, to be able to do more prescribed burn activities, but also a 14-person crew for Western Washington that will be both have a burn boss in place, but also have a 14-person trained crew to implement prescribed burns. So we, while appropriately cautious, and as Peter said, there's a lot of issues to make sure that all the safety elements are in place. We certainly see that as both, a vital role for the future, certainly understanding the essential role that prescribed burning had in these ecosystems in the past, and are hoping to figure out how to incorporate that again in a safe and strategic manner.
Thank you.
David Myland, you have your hand raised.
Yeah. So my question is about, what do we have as a county? Like, what do we have as a workforce that can do this kind of forest health work? You know, hypothetically, suppose the land bank wanted to go forward with a large scale project. Are there the people to do it?
Great question. I think, they're both, everyone's leaning in.
Except this guy.
Carson hasn't spoke in provided an answer, but we'll go through the rounds. Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm always an optimist. So I would say, likely, I mean, it all really comes down to scale, right? I think the best case scenario is that we come at it from kind of multiple fronts, and it's a gradual transition. Like, we don't have like tons of demand dumped on us next year, i.e. a giant project. We need to train a workforce. We need local workforce. I have a for-profit organization that does this type of work. I'm not the only organization it's in the arena, and I encourage others, be they for-profit or be they the nonprofit model, to join in, because I think it takes many hands to really tackle these problems and many different approaches. So I remain optimistic, and like I said, if we can have a somewhat of a ramped up transition. And then I think another important component is, a pretty large question actually is, what do we do with the biomass? We have good practices, and we have a good approach what the preserve needs, ecologically speaking. There becomes to be an issue with what do we do with all the biomass. So that's, I'm not going to go into that now, but that's another component. It is a resource, and it poses some interesting challenges. But I'm optimistic. I think we can do it.
I'll just add that I think the ICC is a great example of how the demand, is met. A number of land management organizations in the county have been talking about the need for a local crew to help with land management. And, the ICC is now in its second year and seems like it's going great. And I think as there's more work, there will be more supply of skilled people to meet it.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there because that workforce development piece is straight at the center of the mission for the ICC, and most of the members on our team, all except for one, had never used a chainsaw or done any forestry work before this year, and within a very short time have become really highly skilled and cranking out some really exciting projects. We were just on Jones Island today doing Gary Hook release, and continue just to be amazed at how much they've progressed. We're utilizing the U.S. Forest Service training program, Chainsaw Safety and Training Program. So they've been a great partner in terms of providing certifications and evaluations for our crew members to really get up to that different stages of development in terms of their tree work. But also we've really been working to provide that intellectual basis for forest restoration, to have them understand the rationale for why we're conducting the treatments we're conducting, how to think about monitoring those treatments, And also definitely the ability to go in and read a stand and understand which trees are stressed and should be removed, which trees we're wanting to invest in. So all of those abilities to assess stand structure and architecture and health are all key elements of what we're hoping to train these crew members for. And we see those jobs, those future jobs of these individuals, both definitely being in potential management roles in the future with land agencies as they evolve and progress in their careers, but also very much as field technicians, people that are directly getting into the field, working in the private workforce, transitioning into roles at Rain Shadow and other different organizations, or working independently as arborists and contractors in the county. And this program is designed, we're not trying to hold people, we're trying to train them up and then get them out into the workforce. So ICC definitely has a mission of trying to enhance that local workforce to meet this demand and these issues.
Yeah, thank you. I think just in summary for David, I'll add that in terms of implementation crews, there's the Island Conservation Corps, the Washington Conservation Corps. Kai spoke to the newly formed DNR crew, which will be available region-wide. And then there's contractors in terms of Carson's Rain Shadow Consulting does on-the-ground implementation. So the workforce capacity is building quite a bit in the last 2 years. Okay, next question we have Tom Baldwin. I'll go to you and then Janet.
Okay, thanks. Just two things. Number one, this issue of biochar is one I think is extremely interesting. I wondered if you've considered the possibility of running a biochar demonstration project, because many people here on the islands do burn piles from time to time. And if they knew what they were doing, they might be able to actually have a biochar generation project to be able to plow some of this stuff back into their gardens. And so why don't we take that one first? I have another quick one after that.
Well, I'll hold you to that one, Tom, about biochar demonstration. And Kai, I think you're suited for that.
Sure, yeah. And actually, I don't need to take up all the airtime. Carson has done a lot of work on biochar too, so I'd love to hear his thoughts on that issue. We certainly have been conducting a number of workshops in partnership with Northwest Natural Resource Group throughout the county for the last 4 years, actually, around different forest health treatments, and biochar certainly being one of those. Tom, appreciate your enthusiasm and certainly echo your enthusiasm around the subject. And, in many ways, certainly we see a real role. The Conservation District, the farm and forest planners are definitely working to help forest landowners transition some of that biomass from their forests then to farmland. But I think this project really demonstrates how, we often have to think about biochar as an agricultural amendment, and really it's played an essential historic role in forest ecosystems, and really the lack of fire in our landscape then has stopped production of charcoal then from entering our forest ecosystem. So I think it's really, within the biochar conversation, I think it's really important to be talking about the role of biochar within forest health, and especially when we're looking at these resiliency challenges, these stresses of climate change and the need for resiliency within our forest ecosystems. Really, charcoal is going to be playing a key role in terms of adding some of those soil characteristics that our plants will require. So thank you. And I should just say also, we will be conducting further workshops later this year that address a series of different subjects, but biochar construction will certainly be one of those. Part of that will actually be some of these public workshops with the land bank. So please stay tuned, and we will be definitely conducting workshops later this year.
Great.
Carson, would you like to add anything?
Sure.
I think we covered it.
Okay, great. Janet, your question?
I'm also hugely enthusiastic about biochar. I've been following Kai's work for I don't know how long you've been doing it in the islands. Are there any carbon credits that are available for biochar production, since it's a store of carbon for thousands of years?
That's a great question. Also, that's probably a bigger subject than we have time to talk about right now. Carbon credits is a vastly evolving international phenomenon, really. There's a lot of work being done to establish carbon credits with biochar. There's a number of challenges because of how different, when you say biochar, it really means 1,000 or really more, like 1,000,000 different things because of different temperatures, production, different wood types, different moisture content of the wood types. So standardization and having the data to then provide justification for those carbon credits has been a challenge because rates change, again, depending on all those metrics. So there's challenges, but I think we are definitely moving internationally towards a lot of opportunities around carbon credits for biochar.
Carson or Peter, any comments?
I wonder if Dean has anything you'd like to add to this conversation. I think you're still there, Dean. Not to put you on the spot.
Well, I'm still here, and I would just like to add that I think this is going to be a great project, and the Turtleback Preserve is a vast place, and we're trying a few things on a small portion of the preserve. We really don't know what the future is going to bring, but we need to sort of have all these tools in our toolkit so we know how to respond as things progress with the climate. So the trust is very much in support of this.
Thank you. That is our time for this evening. This recording will be available on the Land Bank's website, and also any further questions, please feel free to email the contacts provided, or and we'll follow up with you. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and participating. Great questions. Any last comments from the presenters?
Tom, I'll follow up with you and see what your other question was. But yeah, I just wanted to thank Guy and Carson for being here. And I think I'm excited to get started with the project.
I just wanted to quickly recognize the Turtleback management plan that was done recently. Was a co-author. It was very instrumental in this. That's Lindsay Watkins. She's in the room here, but it was a lot of work, and she had a lot of really good contributions. So I want to make sure she got recognized.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I would just like to echo everybody's sentiments in terms of the both current and growing number of individuals and partners that are collaborating around these forest health issues. It's really exciting to see the momentum occur in this county, and just really looking forward to getting to work with everybody as we move forward. So thank you.
Okay. Until next time. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, Aaron, you're muted.
Thank you.
Just another thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.